My name is Miles, he, him, his. I am your host of Stop Stigma, Start Healing, the raw and uncensored podcast where we talk openly and unapologetically about our lives as trans, lesbian, bi, gay, queer, and HIV positive humans. Our goal is to stop the stigma that prevents us from getting the health care we deserve. Each episode will feature real people in our community in conversation and storytelling. And here's my disclaimer. The experiences shared here are valuable and important, and they are based on the lives of those in this space and some of you who are listening. Prepare to be educated, shocked, seen, triggered, and informed. No matter your response, keep the conversation going. Start healing. So I'm super excited that they've invited us to come back for a second season. And of course, I had to start out with one of my favorite topics, oddly, which is meth and gay men. So I appreciate all of my guests coming in tonight to talk about your experiences and shed some light on what this is like for our community to help hopefully lead some folks in the direction of recovery. So before we get started formally into the questions, I'd like to go around the room and introduce each of you. I'll let you introduce yourself, your first name, your pronouns, and what would you like the audience to know about you? And we'll start here.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Tyler. My pronouns are he, him. And what I want people to know about me, I'm the middle of three boys. I come from a small town in Ohio, and yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Oh, short.
Or had some more.
Short and sweet. Hey, I'm Doug, he, him, and I'm from Columbus, born and raised. I am the youngest of three boys. I work for a manufacturing entity, and that is a new venture for me recently. And just going through some career and school type goal changes in my life right now. Things are going pretty well in that area. Fluent musician. Play 6 different instruments fluently.
Wow.
I think that's about it. Yeah. I've been in prior to my career change, I was in transportation for 17 years. So, this was kind of a bit of a change, a shock for me at the beginning of the year, but I'm glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
So birth order and careers. So that's where we're going on. Chris, bring us back.
Hi, I'm Chris, he, him. Let's see. I was born in West Virginia, but I've lived in Columbus now for 22 years. I came to go to Ohio State and then kind of stayed here. I'm the marketing director for a call center company, and I guess I'm the oldest of three, and I work from home and love working from home every day. So that's about it.
Very good. So where do you all fall in terms of the Alphabet Mafia?
Alphabet Mafia.
Alphabet Mafia.
The LGBTQ community. I've recently learned that that's the term that the young folks use, the Alphabet Mafia.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm just old school gay.
You're just old school gay, yeah.
I'm gay as well.
Okay.
I'm gay. I also think I might be pansexual, so I've been exploring that. Yeah.
Okay.
And can I redo my intro? I got
Yeah,
really
please
nervous.
do.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I think I just mentioned I was like the middle of three boys. Okay.
You had to go.
Oh,
first.
there's
So
more.
there's
There's
no
a
structure
deeper
for you.
story.
Child of an alcoholic. I'm a gunkle to my nieces and my nephew.
Oh.
Customer service and hospitality background in my professional world, and but my heart is in nature and helping others find their inner peace. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it.
It was nice.
Thanks. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add to theirs now that Tyler's stepped it up?
I'd like to add the inner peace thing.
Your inner peace too. Great.
Peace and serenity.
So today's topic is Tuesdays without Tina. I was toying around with calling today's episode Party and Play, but I am going to make a nod to a little special space that we've created called Tuesdays without Tina that I happen to know these fine folks through. Some interesting data from SAMHSA and NIMH. We try not to make these super academic or research based, but I think for our listeners at home, I think there's some important things you need to know about meth in our community. So meth use prevalence is 4 times higher among gay men than any other group of folks. 2.4% of our adult community reports using meth. Since 2015, Black gay men have had an increase that's been tenfold in meth use. Deaths related to meth have tripled since 2015. And of course, with that comes HIV rates increasing due to injecting. We hear shocking statistics all the time about meth being a very difficult addiction to treat and that relapse is high. And I challenge the healthcare community continually to say, actually, folks aren't failing recovery, but healthcare providers, as healthcare providers, we have failed to come up with clear treatment protocols to help folks who struggle with meth substance use addiction. As gay men, we snort it, we smoke it, we inject it, we eat it, we shove it up our asses. We normalize it in our community as a party and play aspect, and it permeates our hookup apps and club scenes, as well as many other places. That felt really super heavy, but I think it's important for those folks at home listening to understand why I talk about it all of the time on social media, is because it's an important part of our community that's not getting the attention that it needs. And I'm here to change that. And I'm here with some awesome people who are going to help us share some additional information on that. So we have, if you've listened to the program before, you know we've got some loose questions here, open format. We just chat and we end at the end of an hour. And we're going to go ahead and start with the first question, which is, what does or did your relationship with meth look like? What did you know about it before you used it? How were you introduced? And I will open that up to the floor.
I'll go.
Sure.
So for me, I was I would consider myself being in a very vulnerable state, emotionally and spiritually, during the time when I was introduced to the drug. So my mom was battling cancer. She has since then passed as of 2019 as a result. And, during that time, her 5+ year battle, that's pretty much the time that drug took over my life. I mean, every aspect of my life was just consumed by, using it, how to get it, and it took off really quickly for me. The progression was very quick. I was introduced to it after going to out to a club one night. Invited some friends back to my place and found them using it in one of my restrooms in my place. And so I didn't use intravenously that night, but it was within 2 weeks. That's how quick. That's how quick. And I feel like the relationship with it was touch and go. At first, I wasn't using it every day, several times a day, like it had progressed to in the end. But the obsession, it was really heavy for me because I felt like, mentally, I had just checked out of everything. I just wanted to numb everything that was going on in my life. I was very unhappy with this, the state, that I was in mentally. I wasn't coping very well. My coping mechanisms were completely unheard of. I just did not have any type of coping mechanisms before getting into treatment. I used for about 5.5 years intravenously, and it was, I managed to keep a job, but my behaviors, my lack of punctuality, attendance, all that stuff started to struggle tremendously. Just, completely opposite of me. It changed my personality. It changed how I dealt with things. I just have this I don't give a shit attitude about everything. The things that I did during that time were just unspeakable. But I can look back now and I realize that it wasn't me. It was the drug. Once it got into my system and it started doing, that what they talk about, the chemical change that takes place in your brain. That's really what I can attest to, a lot of my behaviors and a lot of the insidious things that I did during that time. Very unpredictable, very erratic behavior, in and out of the hospital, thinking I was dying. I mean, it was just, it was crazy time of my life. But my relationship with it now, today is I'm in recovery. I got into treatment in 2019. I've had a few relapses, but I have a tremendous amount of support behind me now because I've allowed that to happen. I haven't pushed it away like I have in the past. People try to encourage me to get help, but I was so afraid of what that looked like. I didn't think I had a problem, of course, but it wasn't until I became homeless and I pretty much gave up everything good in my life, separated myself from friends, good people, good support, and people just kind of gave up on me, I feel like, until I was willing to do something different. So that's kind of the long and short of it for me.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
So my use, so it started when I was 24. I'm 46 now. And for about 3.5, 4 years, I used consistently. And my use came in two phases. So for the first 3 years, I was kind of one of those tinkerers. I'm a computer person. So it was a very just me on the computer all night or taking apart the VCR or something crazy kind of thing. And it got to the point where I had to check into a psych ward for meth psychosis. The day I checked in, I couldn't remember the last time I had slept. I think I would do this thing where I would sleep for about 2 hours a day, and I would call it clearing out the cobwebs just so that I was functional enough. And so I imagine that I had been doing it for about 30 to 40 days like that. And it just ravaged me psychologically. From there, I stayed sober for 5 years, 5.5 years. After that, I had a relapse, and my use became more like what we attribute to gay men, which is using and having sex at the same time. And since then, I've been in and out of recovery multiple times. When I first did it, talking about the progression, I did it I was around some people who were doing it, and after a couple days, I decided to do it with them. And it was the first drug I had ever taken where, Monday morning, I wanted more. All the other drugs, it's by the time I partied all weekend, I was done. Monday morning, I wanted more. And that was how fast it took over, was Friday to Monday. And then since then, it's been a year clean and then a relapse, or 6 months clean and then a relapse, until last year was kind of a pivotal year for me. I went to inpatient rehab twice, and I had been to outpatient rehab a few times. And to talk about how quickly it progresses, the first time it was a 3-week relapse. I was going from 0 to 3 weeks and checking myself into an inpatient rehab facility. I was that out of control in that short amount of time. And then, not ever thinking I would go to inpatient rehab again. Then, 6 months later, I find myself in the same position. For me, it takes, I've been clean now for 6 months, and it literally is almost like a full-time job. Staying clean, getting to meetings, going to therapy, talking with my support group. In order for me to stay clean, it is a full-time job.
On top of your full-time job.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's about it for me.
It's a balance, yeah. Mine was luckily 9 to 10 months long, and thank God, because I got to see the underbellies of the city where I didn't want to be and did things that I didn't want to do. And I had gotten into it like after I had just finished rehab for an overdose, the one time that I did fentanyl. And while I was waiting for that, I tried meth for the first time. And because I found a guy on Grindr that had a hookup. So I went to his place on the west side and waited for that, and lied to the drug dealer and said I had Narcan, but at least he asked. That was nice of the drug dealer. Yeah, that was pretty nutty. And so I went to rehab, got out, went to sober living. And I just had a weak moment. I was like having sober hookups and everything. And I had seen it a couple times at places, but it wasn't really like in my face. And then I just had a weak day and a weak moment, and tried it. It was like I thought it was a weed pipe. It looked like it. And it wasn't what I had pictured it, like from the movies and like a big apparatus or anything, or like injecting it. And I instantly fell in love with it. And started, that's all I thought about. The obsession was just unlike anything. And I loved my pain pills, alcoholic, drug of choice is more like, and this was just whole other level. Willing to sell myself, whatever it took to get the next one. And so, yeah.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a couple components to it that like people may not know if they're, if they've never done it or never had someone around that's addicted is there's a sex component and a drug component to it. So you're not just addicted to the drug, but you're addicted to what you do on the drug, which for gay men is have sex for multiple hours with multiple partners. Sometimes it goes on for days. But also, I think the mainstream has this idea of what a meth addict looks like. And a lot of times it's very different in the gay community. I have a full-time white-collar job, and people that worked with me for years said I never knew, because I think there's a perception of who a meth addict is, and it's very different for a lot of people in the gay community. And I think a lot of people would be surprised if they found out some people were addicted to meth.
It's everywhere. It's like right around the corner, and people don't realize it. Like I was at I worked places and like did it in my workplace and just not safe. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and I, as a person who doesn't use, I was surprised when I took a job where I got to work specifically with gay men, because I came in with my ideas of what a meth addict looked like. Right? It's like there's these images in the media, and I would bring folks into my office and they would tell me their stories, and I was, at that point in my mid 40s in a new setting doing therapy, and really surprised that this was happening right in front of me and I wasn't even aware of it. I always call it our community's dirty little secret, because I think people hide it really well, and y'all don't look like what we think someone who uses meth looks like, right? The pictures that you see of like this, the pictures you see that are out there, this sort of scared straight images of what someone looks like who uses meth, is not what typically gay men look like who use meth. So that to me is one of the reasons why it's important to talk about this, because the images, I think, reinforce this idea that I don't have an issue with it because they don't look like that. So let's talk about party and play. I mentioned it in the opening. Party and play, like some folks who are listening out there probably have no idea what party and play is, which is a part of our culture, but I think for many folks can be a lead-in to a relationship with meth.
Yeah, they refer to it as chemsex as well.
Chemsex, yeah.
And, like I said, the second part of my use was completely different. And, party and play means come over to my house. We're going to smoke meth or inject meth, and we're going to get naked and do what naked people do. It often, with meth, involves multiple people at a time, in unsafe sex situations. But in a way, like, that's what I'm addicted to. When I relapse, I think about the all-night sexcapades. I don't think about the drug and what the drug does for me. It's those, euphoric recall of what I've done on it. And that's what's really hard to decouple myself from, is like, that is not natural. Like that, having sex with multiple people for hours at a time is not, I say that you have to decouple yourself from porn sex. Like that's not regular intimate sex. And that's what party and play is, P&P. If you see that on someone's profile on an online app, they have drugs. That's what they're interested in. So.
Isn't it, it's crazy to me. Like because, the apps for me are like touch and go, because I know that if I open up the apps, 9 times out of 10, if it's not someone that I've encountered before, it's somebody in the past that just creeps in. And that for me is always a recipe for disaster, potentially. I mean, I've relapsed over it, several times. And, so I have to be careful. I have to be mindful. If I'm going to open up the apps, I have to mentally prepare myself. This can happen. How am I going to handle this if it comes across, if someone, and I can't, it's one of those situations where, I'm just baffled how many people just have no shame, just flat out putting it out there, knowing that like people, they have their picture on their profile and, they can put a face and a name together and so on and so forth. That's some of the shit I used to do, Then I, it's memory recall for me. I'm like, yeah, I had no shame. I put my, my profile pictures out there. Some people know my name that that are strangers to me. And so, today I look back on that, I'm like, what are the long-term repercussions of me doing that? Putting my information out there like that, my face. And, some of the things that I've encountered, because I stepped away from, I would say, the community, as far as like going out to the bars and going out in social engagements for over a year. I went into a year program. I ended up going into a year IOP program. And during that time, I spent that time working on myself, dealing with the mental health struggles that that led me to using so heavily. And when I came back, obviously, looking healthier, because, for me, I started to look like I used. I feel like, I got to that point because I lost a lot of weight. Just the behavior, some of the things that people would probably, kind of put two and two together,
Yeah.
I would say, towards the end of it. But, as far as the apps, like, yeah, it's crazy how much of that drug is accessible just by opening up the app.
Oh yeah, anywhere.
Yeah.
And I liked the like the Zoom of using. So like there were just little boxes of people partying, playing, and so I liked to put on a show. And so like inviting, I don't know, it's just so insane to me because I actually stumbled upon some of these videos that I had made the other day, and so like that of course was very triggering, and I had to console somebody that actually could watch me delete them and hold me accountable, because we all know the cloud saves the cloud backup and the backup, and that hurts us. And like those memory, like Snapchat memories or like Outlook or like that can like trigger me, like Facebook memories and stuff like that, because I can see myself in active addiction, just looking hollow-eyed and it only took a couple months for me. Like I was looking well fed from rehab, and then all of a sudden, super skinny. And the party and play aspect, it was like the what do they say, Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Dr. Jekyll and
Dr.
Mr.
Jekyll,
Hyde, like
yes,
the
for
mask,
sure.
the double life. And so like, yeah, I just wasn't sleeping. So I had my boyfriend, and then like at night I was like living this double life and working.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned the shamelessness of like what people put out there on apps, and as gay men, I think off the bat we're riddled with shame, right? That everything in society makes us feel awful about being queer people. And so a drug like meth comes along, and I think it's like the great eraser. It takes the shame away, but to the point that then you're putting material out there that like you wouldn't do, right? You wouldn't normally do without the drug being in your body, and how challenging that is to then be on this side of it and to see those images is really tough stuff, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's one of those things that I've had to consistently talk about, because I too have continual therapy, on a weekly basis. I do an IOP program online as well. And so, these are the conversations that I have with other folks that are in recovery. And, there's a variety of different backgrounds. I mean, it's not just meth use. I mean, alcoholic and, opiates, and, the list goes on. And, the thing that's consistent is that the shaming that others put on people that are, that are addicts, and making someone feel like, they're an awful human being. And that's why I feel like so many people don't seek out help. Because they feel like, I don't deserve it. I was in that space for a long time. I think that's what, steered me away from getting the help that I needed sooner, because I felt like I'm a shitty human being. I don't deserve it,
And you relapsed.
and relapse. I know.
Word relapse.
I think for me, one of the big things was, before I got clean the first time, I had never known anyone that got clean from meth, period. I didn't think it was possible. And now, I go to Crystal Meth Anonymous. I'm involved in a couple of different groups, and there's not a lot of long-term recovery. And that's not to say that the groups aren't great. They are. They are saving my life right now. But our stories of, I was clean for a while and I relapsed is the usual story. You don't see many people that have multiple years of sobriety, because it's just a different ballgame as far as trying to get off of it. So
I agree. Yeah, it's I too, attend the Crystal Meth Anonymous group, and that that's something that I feel like for some can be discouraging when you don't have that long-term sobriety, and you hear about relapse. So then I think in the back of my mind for a while, especially in the beginning of my recovery journey, it's almost like a pass to keep relapsing.
Yeah.
It was, but then, I look back on it now. It's like it's at a certain point for me, I had a choice to make. I had a choice to either stay in this, this space that's helping me to recover, or I can continue to just, write that story of relapse over and over and over again. Yep. So, you just have to make, some difficult decisions and remove people out of your life that are toxic for you. Surround yourself with support, even if it's, in the workplace. And, not saying that I talk about my recovery at work. I'm very, I'm very private in that aspect, because, unfortunately, from a career standpoint, that can be detrimental for you. There's still that whole stigma behind it, but
something comes up missing, they look at the recovering addict first, unfortunately.
Exactly. So, but outside, in my personal life, I am, I'm as involved as I can be, as much as I can be.
Good deal.
Because I know that it's important to share my story because it can save someone's life.
Right.
I know that, by me going into recovery and sticking around long enough to listen to what others had to say, it is ultimately, it's saved my life.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
We are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about some markers in apps that let people know that someone is seeking out meth.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Blowing clouds, blazing, pointing, capital T's, shadow people. Are you ready to talk about your relationship with meth and sex? Join us at Tuesdays Without Tina. Visit us at equitashealth.com for more information. So welcome back to Stop Stigma, Start Healing. And we are here in episode 1 of season 2 of Tuesdays Without Tina with 3 great folks who are here with me.
We need to mark that it's Thursday and
is
not
Thursday.
Tuesdays without Tina.
It's okay.
It is, right? We're recording on Thursday, but it is actually.
I just wanted everyone to know.
Episode is
Right.
called Tuesdays Without Tina.
Transparency.
Right.
Great. Yes, I am oriented to time and space. Thank you. So, for the listeners out there that are not as familiar with some of the markers in our lovely, wonderful apps, which are places where people can connect with other people for a variety of things, but there are things in there. There's, I think Taylor Swift would call them, oh, can I say Taylor Swift? Well, there's Easter eggs and profiles that can let a viewer know that someone on the other end may be interested in exploring a relationship with meth with somebody else. What are those things? I kind of know the answer, but I want to hear from you all.
Ice cream cone.
Yes.
Ice cream cone.
Cloud.
Cloud.
emojis.
Yep.
Capital T in the party.
Or in anything.
In anything, really. Yeah.
Ice cream. An ice cube.
They're pretty blatant.
The
about
statement,
Oh, yeah.
The statement "get to the point."
Get to the
Yes.
to the
point.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
that
is
means
injecting.
Yes. Yes. I've definitely seen my share of that.
I think also like, on a weeknight after midnight, by 4 a.m., at least 60% of the people on there are on meth. Because
if not more.
who's on Grinder at 4 o'clock in the morning, on a
Unless you
Tuesday? Occasionally you'll get that person that's like, I just got home from work or something like that.
I'm
but
headed to the gym. You do get the fitness gurus
Yeah,
at 4:30 in the morning, but sometimes
There are
you
some
get
people.
the leftovers.
yeah, there are some people, but more often than not, if you see people consistently on there at like weird hours of the night, you're like, okay,
It's the same crowd too,
Yeah, it's the
especially
same
in
crowd.
Central Ohio. Same
Yeah.
people.
Same crowd. And I'm sure it's like that in other communities around the country. Is you
Oh, yeah.
probably see the same folks, and you can start seeing some of the trends. So why is it important? I dragged you all down here tonight to talk about this issue and share really important aspects of your life and your experience. But why is it important for us to talk about meth in our community? Why is that? Why have I brought you here tonight?
Nobody talks about it.
I feel like it's its own pandemic in itself.
Absolutely.
I mean, I call it a pandemic in our community because, I was just reading a statistic the other day that someone shared in the community that meth overdoses and deaths have now exceeded heroin, which is like crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because obviously that has been the known drug, between, heroin and fentanyl. Overdoses, obviously because of the type of drug that it is, but because fentanyl is starting to show up in everything, that in itself isn't surprising to me. But to read that it's now exceeded, overdose from opiates is just it's mind-boggling. But at the same time, I get it. I've put myself in the hospital because I thought I was, I thought I was overdosing and dying, and several times. And so I'm sure there's probably something on my chart in at least a few of the hospitals in the area, like this one.
This one.
Watch out for this one when he comes through. Yeah, but yeah, it's important to talk about it because it's just one of those things that I know the community knows that it's there, but people are just so uncomfortable to talk about it, or they judge. The judgment. The judgment. Judgmental aspect is just so high that people don't feel like they're ashamed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Chris, how about you?
It's having done it for 20 years, I've seen the community evolve over time, and it's cheaper, stronger, and easier to get today than ever. When I first started, it was more expensive. The quality was in and out, and sometimes it was unavailable. Now I can go from not using to buying it and back to my house in 15 minutes. And it's available 24/7. And it's important to talk about it because I think there's a misunderstanding of what causes it, what it looks like, and that like I said, I didn't know anyone that recovered from meth, and it's important to let people know there are people recovering from meth, and it can be done. It just takes work, and it takes a community to do that.
Can't do it alone.
Yeah, definitely. It needs support behind you in all aspects. I mean, I had to, remove, like I said, people out of my life. Not that they were like using buddies or anything, or I didn't use with them, but these were folks that just were not willing to understand what I've been, what I had been through and what I'm trying to do now. And, I think that crosses over in so many other aspects of our life. I mean, not just someone who's battled addiction, but, just, be willing to put people around you that support you and lift you up, encourage you and challenge you.
How about you, Tyler? You've got some notes there.
It's so important. I just feel like our community is so much more vulnerable to it, that taking that first one, and we let our guards down. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to dance. We're trying to hang out with a friend, and it's just that vulnerability. And for me, I'm a people pleasing, validation seeker, and so if it means that someone's gonna like me a little bit more, I'm probably gonna do it. And so I just fear for those people in our community. And it's important because the affluent just sweep it under the rug, and they don't want to talk about the meth addiction when they're popping their extra dextroamphetamines, and it's the same thing. But they don't want to talk about it. So we have to.
Yeah, we do.
You know, I think too, there's this idea that, someone who uses meth is bad or they're immoral and things like that. Everyone sitting here is a good person. Everyone here is very intelligent. There's not some moral failing or some, we were idiots one night. Like, yeah, I really regret like trying it that first time, but I'm not a stupid person, and I knew exactly what I was taking, and I just didn't know it was that strong. Honestly, I didn't know. Of course, I didn't know that it would go from 0 to 100 in a day or two.
Everything.
No time.
And just going from, living a good life to like destroying my life within months. If I would have ever known that, my God, like, but yeah, it's really tough. And, but I'm glad I have friends around that support me. There's a community here in Columbus that's recovering, and it's important. And thankfully, there's not as much stigma behind a relapse as there are in other communities. We as gay men who are crystal meth addicts understand, like, hey, they're back out, good, they made it back in.
Oh yeah.
But, we understand it's hard. And, there's no shame. The only shame is not coming back or not trying, so.
And we're there with open arms, but we have to set boundaries too. Like, we can't enable, and I know we've talked about it recently, we want to help our brothers and sisters and like fellow addicts, but we have to draw the line between protecting our recovery and what we have, and we want to let them in our homes and let them take a shower or something like that, but we have to draw the line. And so it is difficult because rehabs will not take you for just meth use. Yeah. Like, I've had to go get trashed because they wouldn't take me just to go back and check into rehab. Do you think I went back and checked in that night? So it's just broken. Things are broken.
It is broken. Oh my gosh, Tyler, you're going to get me started on the failed healthcare issues here.
That's another episode.
Yeah, right. That's season 3. So, but maybe part of season 2. So you've already touched on it a little bit in terms of like apps, but how does our community support using meth? I think our community, we really struggle with substances in general, because I think so much of what we do incorporates celebration in substance use, and we sort of buck the system that sort of puritanical system. However, for those of us who are inclined to connect with substances at a more dangerous level, I think there's a huge opportunity. So for the listener at home, like, what are some of those ways that our community helps support access to meth?
I feel like it's that whole mentality of work hard, play harder, that our community just kind of like puts out there naturally. I think it's just something, that's how I was introduced to the community, is like through the clubs, through the bars. I went in underage. I remember going in underage. I was 17. I was still in high school. So, I got exposed to the culture very early in a very vulnerable age. And so, and so did, drugs, other drugs. And so there's been ever since, my adolescence up until now, and, being 40, plus years old, there's always been an avenue to get what you need some way or another. I feel like a lot of the use that I have, a lot of my using didn't financially hinder me, because most of the time someone had it, I never had to pay for it. So it was really easy for my addiction, my addictive, personality to really just take off and run with it, and so, the the clubs, the club scene, the bar scene, Pride's coming up. That's a trigger for me. I don't go down to the parade and, go out to the clubs and things like that anymore because I know that it's putting me in a vulnerable state.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I steal your I'm 40 plus? I love that. I'm 40 plus.
Yeah, 40 plus.
40 plus 13 and a half.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Chris, how about you? You look like you had something to say about
Yeah,
this.
I was trying to think about it. There's, excuse me, there's like certain parts, there's the circuit scene, which, a lot of that is drug fueled. You're partying, going from party to party for a whole weekend.
Is that what a circuit? So for those of us who are 20 or 80,
like myself.
what is a circuit scene?
So a circuit scene, there's not a lot of circuit parties anymore, but the idea is one city will host a circuit party, and it goes from one party. So like a club will host it from, Friday night from 10 to 2, and then there'll be an after party somewhere. And so it kind of goes as a circuit, throughout the weekend.
Oh, okay.
So
It's like a bar hop.
yeah,
Kind of.
Up all weekend.
on steroids
Right,
or
right.
meth.
With meth, right. Without
Yes.
beer, it's a okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking though, it's for me, it's really like the online presence that's so just gasoline on the fire. Like, they used to talk, they still talk in like rehabs and, AA and stuff, like get rid of all your numbers, all the numbers of your old friends. I'm like, well, my dealer's on Twitter and Instagram and Grinder and Facebook and
MySpace.
I just can't delete his number, and so if I want it, I'll just find him somewhere. But yeah, it's just hyper intensified how easy it is once you get stuck in that loop. Yeah.
Marketing.
Yep.
I mean, it's the marketing. I mean, they're very, it's kind of this insidious thing, and I keep using that word because it's such an insidious drug, that there's avenues that, you may not have, that something may trigger you now. Like I had this conversation the other day. What might trigger you now may not trigger you later. You may have new triggers. There may be new things. And so I feel like marketing contributes to a lot of this in our community. The hot muscly guys with the Speedos and the sweat,
Always
the bar.
partying, yes.
Yeah. I attune a lot of it, especially.
But it's not only because I think for me, it's easy to point the finger at, and we won't say names, but like particular bathhouses or even bar events.
Yes.
But even simple things like I think Facebook and Instagram pages, the greater presence of and I'm not a user, but images that look really methy, if I can say
Sketchy.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, real
like-
sketchy. Yeah.
Well, and I think
Which leads you to OnlyFans, which leads you down into the rabbit hole, right?
well, and it's that, that more sex and harder sex and kinkier sex. And, that's so in line with the meth lifestyle, for a lot of people. But generally, it's society, making gay men feel inferior. There's that muscle boy. I'm not that muscle boy. So I need, I can take something that will completely throw my inhibitions away. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I'm the sexiest, hottest, smartest person in the world.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, little Chris that's, scared of going out to the club is Clubman 2023.
Exactly.
Think about that for a minute.
Exactly.
How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, a lot of the same. Just this hustle culture that we through the social media, and it's just too much. Like we have this expectation that we have to, live up to, and it's a lot. For me, it was also a work thing. Like I, would work harder, or I thought I would work harder and be more focused, but it got messy very quickly. So yeah, it's hyped up a lot, but also that whole like society kind of like it made me want to use it more because it was a dirty little secret. Like I liked it being a dirty little secret. I liked people not knowing how messed up I was. So it was kind of like a mental thing as well. And like I wanted to mention, like there were good moments, fun moments, and that's what messes me up the most. Of like after it all, is like
It's
my
fun
brain,
until it's not.
all the negative shit that happened, just ignore that, you know?
Yeah.
That threesome, foursome, you know, whatever. That's where
I
it was at.
agree.
That there are going to be 2 good things that happen out of the 20, but the 2 outweigh the other 18 or the other 20.
Well, I think when you're in it, you don't see your life spiraling. You know, I always think of like, you know, some of my friends that are still on the drug. It's like, you know, they'll be like, oh, I couldn't pay my insurance today and therefore the car got towed. Damn the insurance. And I'm sitting there going, it's the meth. Right. It's the meth. But they don't see that. And I didn't see that. You know, my last relapse, I remember saying to someone, you know, I take a drug that fires dopamine throughout my entire brain and I have orgies all night. Why would I ever want to stop?
Right.
You know, until it's threatening my job, my, you know, my house, my relationship. Like, why would I ever want to stop?
But none of that stuff reads because your brain is still firing dopamine. So
Don't
you're
see it at all.
still feeling extreme pleasure
vision.
Yep.
in spite of the fact that your life is on fire.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's...
And that's kind of a misconception too, because I think a sober person who's never done meth before would be like, why don't they realize they're sleeping on a couch? You know, or why don't they realize, you know, they look horrible? Like, they don't. They don't realize, you know, they're in their world. I was in my world, you know, so.
I mean, hell, I'm sleeping in my car in the middle of winter. You know what I mean? In the middle of winter. And, you know, I'm okay with that. I was so desperate to try and get away from what I feel like was enabling my use at the time that I literally moved all my shit out, all my belongings, put it in the trunk of my car. And I have a sleeping bag, and I'm in the back seat of my car. That's also called isolation. I got to the point where I just started to isolate from everyone because I was just so far into my addiction that I just I didn't want to be around anyone. I couldn't. I just felt like the odd man out. You know, no one wanted to be around me. Even you know, it's bad when like other people that are using. Or like, I don't
want to be around you.
I don't want to be around you. You wear me out, girl. You wear me out. You know, because my mental state was just getting into such a disarray that I was so unpredictable. You know, even this, you know, the party and play thing just really, it didn't really take off for me that way. I was more into like porn and like, you know, isolation, like when I got in, you know, deep into my addiction. So it kind of looked a little bit different for me in that aspect, but yeah.
And everyone's experience with it. I mean, we're doing some generalizations, but everyone's experience with meth is a slightly different path. I think
exactly.
As gay men, we've got this sort of universal idea, but there are other versions of that. I wonder, switching gears here a little bit, knowing we're coming close to the end, Tyler. Right. So what things came along that helped you change your relationship with meth? Like what was it for you? Was there a moment where you're like, enough is enough, it's got to change? Is it the cold night in the car? Is it
No, it was, I still had money in my bank account. I still had work the next day. I didn't burn everything down yet, and I was at the mental brink though. Like I had probably lost my mind. And so it was like, I had realized it was either this to the bitter end, you know, I was going to get a bad batch or something, or I go get help. So I hadn't lost everything yet. I wasn't homeless yet, but I was insane.
How did you know that though?
Because I had gotten sober multiple times off of other substances. And so my training kicked in, I guess. You know, the recovery Yoda, my spirit guide, whatever, like pulled me out of it. I knew where it was going. I knew.
Okay.
I agree. I agree with that. I resigned from my job to go into treatment. I hadn't lost it, I resigned. And there were other things going on at the same time too. My mom had just passed, and so like I was ready to just put myself in a space where this could possibly, turn things around for me, because I just got tired of going into the hospital and, putting myself through that hell. I mean, it was, yeah, it was embarrassing. I mean, I look back on it like, just being in that psychosis state, which I experienced many, many times, feeling like everyone's staring at you, and like, you're sitting in the ER room, and like these healthcare providers are just like, oh my God. Another one. Yeah. I just, that for me was just like the anxiety, the shame, the guilt. That's what I feel like, what pushed me. Having resources, Equitas, has definitely provided resources for me. And there's other entities as well. But like, putting myself in a community of recovery is really what has changed the game for me. It is a full-time job. Yeah. It's constant work. You can't just decide one day, oh, well, I'm not going to do anything with my recovery. I have to do something with it. I don't have to like be in the recovery rooms per se, like every single day, but like I do something to contribute to my recovery each day, in some aspect or another. So that's really been what's been helpful for me, and also, the people that I choose to surround myself with.
How about you, Chris?
Thank God, like most of the time I had the clarity of knowing that the life I wanted is not congruent with doing meth 24/7. And I will say my last relapse scared me a lot, because I was actually thinking about throwing my life away. And that I had never done before. I would always put my job ahead of, if I were on the line with my job, I'd stop. Or if I were on the line financially, I'd stop. Or if a boyfriend was leaving me, I'd stop. This past time, I was really considering, to the point that I was doing calculations of, okay, if I drained my 401k, if I sold my house, how long could I make it doing meth 24/7 all the time? And that scared me so much, because that's when I saw that I would go from white collar job, house, all of that stuff, to couch surfing, depending on other people. And in a way, I was okay with it. I was knowing that that's where it would end. And it was that, I didn't want to stop. I couldn't stop. I had to walk into rehab and lock myself up. I used at 2:00 and checked myself in at 5:00. I had to stay somewhere for 30 days just to get away from it. And even after 30 days, I still was like, okay,
It's not
time, this clock is ticking. Let's see how far we go again this time, But thankfully today, I see the life I want to have, and that's what keeps me from doing it now. Is I have to work every day because I love the life I have. And, thankfully, it was actually my boss who said this, when I told him I needed to go to rehab a second time. He said, you have to love life more than you love that drug. And for a lot of times, it was not like that. Yeah.
So our last final moments, this is a super heavy topic, but I want to acknowledge that I think folks who are potentially listening in are people who may also be on the struggle bus. And I invited you three in because I know you all have sort of messages of hope that I think are important for people to hear out there in the world, in radio, podcast land. So if you could finish up our time together with some sort of message to share with others in the community about the next step or something hopeful, give us some hope.
Get connected.
Yeah.
Find the resources in your community. And if you can't stay sober, try to stay sober for an hour. Try to stay sober for a week. Maybe don't wake up tomorrow and not use for 6 hours, and then make it 12. get some clarity and find connections, find people who are staying sober, find people that know about meth addiction treatment. For those of us who are around Equitas, or, I went to a rehab where they understood meth addiction, and we're very lucky. And I hope that there's those resources in other communities.
Yeah. Because of how lonely I felt at the end, and how
Yeah.
I was fully convinced I had nobody. So if you feel like that, if you've, your family like exiled you, you have no friends, like there are people willing to help you. And they are in the rooms, they are healthcare providers, they are, find Miles and message him. If you don't want to call somebody, like we will meet you somewhere if you need to talk to somebody. Like it is possible. And in AA, they say like, relapse is not a requirement, but within the meth community, it pretty much happens regularly. So don't be ashamed. We will still love you. So come see us. Yeah.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that. The many times that I've gone back out and come back, I've always been welcomed with open arms. There's no judgment, and if anything, people like we've said before, are happy to see you come back and you made it back. There are resources out there. Sometimes it may require a geographical movement. You may have to go outside of your community, but they're out there. A lot of, resources in the community can even come and pick you up, take you to a facility if you need to get help. But there is help out there. There is hope. There is recovery.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, because of COVID, so many meetings went online. And there are so many, if you're in BFE, wherever, you can get on a Zoom call. My favorite meeting I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and I do a meeting almost every day that comes out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so if you're somewhere that doesn't have resources, there's Zoom meetings every day, all day. Yes. You can find them on crystalmethanonymous.org. And they have a whole section on just Zoom meetings.
I actually was gonna finish with that. So it was amazing that you just said that. Is that I often tell people the gift of COVID is the accessibility of things outside of our geographical regions because of how we had to rely on technology and wherever you are in the world. And if you're listening to this, you probably have some sort of internet access. There are lots of resources if you hit your search menu. Tons of 12-step spaces, CMA. There's lots of welcoming AA 12-step fellowships that will, especially the gay fellowships, that will welcome you in. If you're in Ohio and you're connected or have access to Equitas Health, we have resources available. There are community providers that are doing this work. Find those resources and get connected. Put as many resources in your toolbox as possible, whether it's smart recovery or like put everything in there.
All of it.
Put all of it in there because we really, this is a, Doug said it's a pandemic. We need all of the things that we can use to help survive and live and thrive, and use all of it. Use all of it.
Yes, and if nobody told you today, you are loved and you are worth it.
I am?
Yes.
Aw. And everyone out there listening.
Yes.
We're going to end with that. Thank you very much for participating and listening in to Tuesdays Without Tina. Stay connected in conversations online and get connected. And we'll see you back at our next episode. Good night.